Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 136 of the I Rock Knits podcast. My name is Cori Eichelberger, and I go by I Rock Knits everywhere on the internet. And this will go live on November 21st, 2023, right before Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone. If you're in the United States and you're celebrating that this week, if you're getting together with family and friends, we will have a very small group at our house. Just Kylie and Stevie will come over. We have invited my parents to come up, but I don't know that they're going to kind of watch the weather. And they usually have Thanksgiving with my brother in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So it was really nice last year to just have a really small group and just be able to have it be really relaxing and not cook for 20 some people. But I can do it either way. I just know that my husband and daughter would prefer to just kind of have that low key energy in the house. I want to give everyone a shoulder update. I had my 6-week checkup this week and my doctor was very pleased. My physical therapist had told me that I was ahead of the game and that she thought that he would be pleased with my progress. And so I went in to see him and he was very nice and talked me through kind of what they had done with the bicep. And he drew me a little picture on the paper that lays on the table that you're supposed to crawl up on, which I didn't do. He just took his pen over there and drew what he had done, and they take out a piece of your bicep and they move it over, and it doesn't affect your ability to move and strengthen. So that was interesting to me. But yeah, I really have no pain to speak of. If I do too much, it aches a little, but it's more like a bruise. And so this is what he said to me: "You are in first place, and if you turn around, you can't see second place." He said, and I don't think that has as much to say about me as it does about you. And I said, no, it has a lot to say about you. So many people have told me that he's an amazing shoulder surgeon. And so I think it has a lot to do with his abilities. But I also said to him, this is my 6th replacement and my 13th surgery. I'm good at this. I've gotten better at it. I know how to recover. I know how to take the meds and sleep for the first 10 days. It's miserable, but you can do it and you can get through it and things get much better. And you live with a lot of pain before you have a replacement. So I think people who have replacements are so thankful that it's over and that they can just move forward. Not that it isn't hard, but had this been my first replacement or someone else's, I think it would have been significantly harder. So my goal is to have 120 degrees of lift, and I already have it. This is more than I had before the surgery. And he said, some people don't ever get that by the very end, after all the PT. And then my side arm is really good. I just want to work on keeping this down when I lift it up instead of lifting that shoulder up. So it was great. I was so pleased. I took in a list of 12 questions, I think, because I kept asking my PT, can I do this? Can I do this? And she said, I can't make those decisions. Write everything down and hand it to the person when you check in. And they take you back and then they will give it to the doctor. And when he comes in, he will just go through it. And I thought, okay. So I wrote down, can I use my hair dryer in my right hand? Can I wash my hair with my right hand? How much can I lift with my right hand? If my arm starts to get sore, do I need to stop? How far can I walk because when you walk, your shoulder swings. So when I first had it done and I was trying to go out and walk a little bit, it would hurt, right? And so I thought, well, this isn't good. And so she told me that I should only be going for 10-minute walks and keep it down. But we've had such beautiful weather here in Minnesota. I mean, beautiful. Sunny and 60, 65 degrees at 70. It's just been glorious this fall, especially in the last week. And so I just wanted to get out and walk. And I'm not having any pain, but I also don't want to do damage. I want to be very careful. So yeah, it's going really well. He said to me, yeah, all of this you can do. Yes, 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 all the way down. But the only one was, can I ever sleep on my right side again? Because that is how I want to sleep. And it's been really hard for me to learn how to sleep on my left and my back. And he said, yes, but someday, don't try it yet to sleep on your right side. So it was really a good appointment. You can start doing some small home improvement projects. Just don't lift sheetrock. He said, what about me makes you think that I would be interested in home improvement projects? I just thought it was funny. It was kind of a man thing. Oh, that's gendered, Cori, but whatever. Women can do home improvement projects too. Yeah, it was good. I gave him a hat, a cabled hat. I have a box of knitwear in my basement that I just keep with a big lid on it, and for Christmas and whatever, if I see people. And every time I have a surgery, I give my surgeon a hand knit item. I gave my hand guy some mittens. I want them to keep their hands. And he got a little embarrassed. He's a big guy, big, tall guy, older man, a little older gentleman, gray hair. And he said, oh, that was very nice of you to think of me, as he backed out of the room. He was just like, I said, it's just a hat for in your car. It was cabled, but I said, it'll be very warm. And then that way, if you're out and about and it starts to snow or whatever, you'll have a hat to run, put on or whatever. So he just he said, well, thank you so much. I wrote him a thank you note. And because I'm so thankful. I know I've had 6 body parts replaced, but I am so thankful. Otherwise I would be crippled. I literally would be unable to be mobile. And so the fact that they can continue to fix me, I'm just so thankful. What am I wearing today? I am wearing the StevenBe Ponchini. So this is knit with bee sweet yarn, held with mohair, and it has these boxes with yarn overs, and it has a tail on one side that's much longer. It hangs down, see this section? Hangs down on one side, and then it just goes across your body on the other side. Super easy to throw on, take off. It was cool this morning, and we were going to look at a couple of wedding venues. Kylie has been sick this week, so we missed one on Monday. She had a terrible cold, and so then we went to one this morning in downtown Minneapolis, and so I was like, am I gonna need a sweater? Do I need a sweater? I don't need a sweater. So I just put this on, and then when it got warm, I could take it off, and then now I have it back on again. But the kids we're still looking for wedding venues. It's so cute. I was talking to her on the phone the other day, and he's done this before, but she'll be talking to me in the car on her way home from work. Then she'll be walking into the house and she'll say, Stevie, I'm home. And he'll yell, yay, Kylie's home, every time. So cute. Just, melts my heart that he, does that for her when she comes in through the door. It's just really cute. I do have a Cori story this week. For those of you that follow me on Instagram, you already know what happened with the pup, the Chevy. Most mornings I have peanut butter toast or peanut butter bread, or an egg with peanut butter bread on the side. Anyway, so I always let Cody back in the day lick off the butter knife, and so now it's just a habit, right? I have leftover peanut butter on the knife, and I go over to the gate and let him lick it off. So the peanut butter jar was empty. And so, it was a pretty big one. And so I took the little spatula out of the sink, and I was out of the drawer, and I was cleaning it out so I could run some water and then recycle the jar. And there was a whole glob of peanut butter on the end of this skinny spatula. And so I took it over to the gate, and I let Chevy lick it. And he's got a huge tongue, and he licked it, and the whole top of the spatula came down. Right down his throat, just came flying off. He didn't even know what happened. He just opened that whole piece of peanut butter, and it was the skinnier spatula, but I wasn't even thinking that the top could come off. Like, I do this 3 times a week. Of course, I panic, right? I'm just panicked. So I call Kylie, because Ross is at work, and I'm like, you're not going to believe what happened. And she's like, Mom, call the vet. And I was like, oh, good point. I said, I don't know if I need to make him throw up, or if we're gonna have to watch for it to come out. Like, I don't know. It's, it was probably that long and, that wide. So it wasn't small. So I called the vet, and she was in surgery. So then they said she'd call me back. So I waited an hour, and it was just stressful, right? He's fine. He has no idea. But yeah, it was stressful. So then I called them back, and I said, hey, I'm sitting over here just worried. And she said, let me walk down and see if I can ask the doctor. She's still in surgery. So she went down. She said, can you bring him in and just leave him, drop him off, and we'll probably have to make him throw up. And I said, that would be great, because I don't want to do that part. I have had to do that for Cody once, don't remember what he got into, but hydrogen peroxide. I had to pour it down. He didn't want to open his mouth, so then I poured some in his dog dish, and I threw a piece of bologna in there, and he ate that down, and then he irked right away. But with Chevy, he's so young, and he's just very clumsy still. He hasn't quite grown into his legs. He stumbles a lot when he's running and kind of crashes, and so I can't really hold him because of my shoulder. I mean, I just don't want him to jerk. And so I said, yes, I can drop him off. So I took him over, and they took him back, and I said, a couple hours, and she said, yeah. So I went to knitting, told everybody what had happened, and then they called me, and they had to make him throw up twice, and the second time, there it came. They kept it in a little baggie for me. So I posted it on Instagram, the little blue spatula that is now in the garbage. And I thought they would say, well, you have to take him into the emergency vet, right? She's in surgery. She does surgeries on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. I already know that. And the emergency vet, it's going to cost me $500 to walk through the door. And then if they can't get it out, they'll have to open him up. I mean, it could turn into a huge expense. $111 in my little town outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul. Small town vet. She's super busy, but you know, I'm sure a tech probably did it, but it's not fun, right? They had to clean up. It's funny now. It was not funny then. Now it's funny because he's just like happy as a clam. Mom, what else do you have to eat? So that's my Cori story for this week. And don't forget that I am teaching Rivalry next Tuesday the 28th. So from 5:30 to 8 on Zoom. And you register via BeWoolen, BeWoolen.com. Here, it's a yarn store here in Minneapolis. They're doing all the registrations. They collect the fees. It's a 2.5-hour class where we learn all the things about Rivalry and things that you can do that you didn't even know were available there. It's a very good class. I highly recommend. I would love to see some of you join me, and it would be kind of fun to have be teaching again now that my shoulder is healing. I am putting myself out there. I've asked a few yarn stores locally if they want to start setting up January usually through May, sometimes into June. And things kind of slow down a little bit in the summer, and I do more of the bigger events. And so if you have a local yarn store or going to an event and they're looking for teachers, recommend me. All my classes are listed on my website, and I can also send out a packet of class with a description of each class, as well as a speaking and teaching fee list that I have. So if you know of anybody that's looking for a teacher next year, or you're planning an event, get together of some type, yeah, think of me. Okay, we have a question this week about singles. And so I am drawing for a prize if you ask questions in the Rivalry thread or on Instagram in a DM or in the comments down below. And this week's question is from Suzanne, and it says, I have a few single skeins of beautiful single ply yarn, fingering weight to be specific. I was either given them, won them, or was inspired to buy them because of the color or the dyer before I realized that I tend to prefer plied yarns. I find that singles pill, but I'm wondering if it's because I'm not pairing them with the right patterns. What kinds of patterns highlight the singles best? What is the best to avoid, and which patterns of yours might shine? Well, I am in agreement with you, Suzanne, that I am not a fan of singles yarn. I do have some in my stash, but I've never designed a pattern with a single, and you're right, they do pill. I have knit a sweater with singles, and it does pill, but it's not terrible, and I do have a couple of tips about that. But just for anybody who's newer and doesn't understand what a single ply would mean, I just wrote down some notes for myself to remember kind of how to talk about this. And I put these today in the thread under Suzanne's question. So if you want to go back and refer to it. A single or a 1-ply yarn. So you can have 1 ply or 2 or 3, and They twist around each other, so you could pull them apart at the top and you can count how many plies are in a piece of yarn. If you try to pull out a single, there's no plies in there. It's just a bunch of loose threads. And that is single strands composed of fibers held together by at least a small amount of twist. So this is a singles yarn. I brought one over. And you can see that this one actually has some silk in it or something. What is this made out of? Wool, acrylic, and linen. But there is very little twist in the yarn, and if I would untwist it, it wouldn't separate into little pieces. It's just kind of barely twisted together. So single ply offers a lighter, fluffy feeling to your knits while still offering warmth. But it means less stitch definition. So your stitches won't show as much. They'll be a little smoother. A single ply yarn can have a smooth appearance. They're often softly spun and give the fabric a soft appearance. Single yarn looks best with plain stockinette stitch, but still looks good with uncomplicated cable patterns. But I would never use a single ply for socks. 2-ply yarns are generally more durable than single plies due to their increased thickness and strength, and single ply yarn produces pleasantly round and plump stitches, making it a perfect choice for all lace and textured stitch patterns. Its smoother surface doesn't have any texture, so it doesn't distract. You know how like you wouldn't knit a lace pattern with like variegated yarn because it can distract from the lace that you're doing? Well, a single ply will even allow a lace pattern to shine a little bit more. Here's my tip about knitting with single ply. If you have like, I had a sweater's quantity. Do I still have that sweater's quantity in there? I want to make like a plain V-neck because it's also variegated yarn, and I will knit it at a much tighter gauge, because the tighter I knit it, the less surface area there is for those strands to rub up against, right? Does that make sense? So the pilling, I can decrease the pilling a little bit. If you're a spinner and you have single ply yarn, you can put more spin into the single ply. And if you have a ball winder, you can, with someone else's help, maybe you could do it yourself, but you can twist and wind as you go and add more twist to a single ply yarn, which is what sometimes spinners do. You don't want to twist it so much that it kinks on itself, but you can, if you just didn't put enough twist in, you can go back in and twist some more to allow it to have less surface area. So there are multiple ways that you can use a single ply yarn, like I did in that sweater. It was I'm gonna say it was maybe an Araucania yarn, and I knit my cross over kind of like, it looks like a ballet sweater with the long I-cord that you tie around the back in that, and it really has held up well. I did knit it at a tighter gauge, and then it got washed a little, and you know, so it felted just a tiny bit, just enough to cause it to maybe not pill as much too. So that would be another option if you're working with a single ply wool, is that you could also knit it into a hat and then just wash it a little bit, you know, in some warm water with some agitation, and see if it wouldn't give you a little bit more structure to keep the hat from pilling. I would not knit a cowl with a single ply, because a single ply also isn't going to have any structure, so it isn't going to have any height, especially fingering. You know, that's going to, most fingering weight cowls become kind of like a necklace, right? Because they just kind of fall down on you. So I don't know that I put the energy into that. So if you're asking about what of my patterns, which is really nice of you, Suzanne, because then I get to promote some of my patterns, which is lovely. But I would say any of my shawls would be appropriate, and a lot of my shawls are, well, a couple of my shawls are mini skein shawls. So that would be the Very Merry Mix-Up, which was an Advent, and that's still a really pretty rectangular shawl with kind of pointy ends. And then the hi-ho shawl. Both of those are kind of mini skein shawls. The phases shawl, which is the one that is got 3 parts, and then it's got holes in the center that you can put your arms through, so you can wrap it over your shoulders, but your arms are through it. The phases shawl would be a really good one to use for single fingering weight. And then my Advent mystery knit along from a couple of years ago was the 12 days of knitting, and you knit 12 sections of a cowl or scarf after Christmas. So you started on day 1 after Christmas, and that is lace and fingering. I use mini skeins, but you certainly wouldn't have to, and that would be perfectly appropriate. It is knit in a circle, so then it's double-sided so the back doesn't show of the scarf, and then you can connect it into a loop or not. You can make it half as long, or you can double it around your neck. So that would be another one that's fingering weight. And then my rhubarb ball scarf, that's also fingering. That's stockinette on the bias. All those things would knit up in a single ply yarn quite well, depending on if you have more than one skein. If you only have one skein, maybe my kite tail shawl, the fingering weight is a 1 skeiner. Yeah, that would be a 1 skeiner. Then that has the loops across the top that you stick the I-cord tail through. It's called a shawl, but it's really more like a cowl around your neck. So yeah, there you go. I hope that answers your question and gives you some things, some ideas. I have a finished object from way back a while ago before my surgery. I have some more over here, a couple of over here too. So this is the Dark Cloud by Joji Locatelli. I wouldn't call it a sweater, but it has sleeves and it's meant to be open underneath the armpits. I stitched it right here and I put a really pretty button on. So I hope I'll zoom in on that button. So there's one on either side. It's like a drop shoulder, kind of oversized piece. They have a ton of colors. This is like a blown yarn, like a tubular yarn in Aran weight. It's knit at like 18, so it's just a tiny bit heavier than worsted. We saw this poncho sweater up at Bee Woolen, and I was with Mary Yazbek, who you all met on the podcast, and we both bought the yarn for it. And I cast on and knit the first one, and I am not a fan of garter stitch, which I think you all know, and it turned out too small. I picked the wrong size. It didn't drape like hers did. It's just a more stiffer fabric. And so I was like, fine. I like to give my mom a sweater for her birthday or Christmas each year. So I ordered more yarn, and then I got help from Victoria, and we talked through like how, if I wanted it to be longer so that I could wear it like with leggings or something, instead of having it be quite so short, and then have the whole thing be just a little more roomy. And then that worked out much better. That just moved forward much better. So literally there are two of these. And I do feel like a lot of people knit it significantly longer. Like the one at the shop seemed longer than what the pattern maybe called for. But yeah, it's the pieces, and then you pick up from here down and around the bottom and across and up, and then that ribbing happens. So yeah, it's kind of a neat piece, and it's a color that I don't have. Like, I stood in front of the colors and they had lovely colors. Maybe I can bring them up here. Yeah, so there's a red, black, brown, gold, lime, dark green, blue, navy, ocean, teal, purple, berry, cocoa sand, tomato, cactus, plum, lavender, pink. I mean, they're just a ton of colors. Just many colors. Oh gosh, quite a few people have it for D-stash. So you can maybe get the yarn for cheaper. At the bottom of the Ravelry page for yarn, where it says Cascade Cantata, you go down to the bottom and people who are selling it. So yeah, I liked the red a lot. And I like the orange, but everything I have is orange. And so I said, pick something else that's bright. Okay, I spent a little money a while ago. It's been a couple weeks now. And I don't always have to share and confess, but I do, so no judgment. But of course, if any of you are on Instagram and you saw this, oh my Gigi, Gigi made it. It's everything you could want in a tool set on purpose. And this came from Jimmy Bean's Wool. It's Knitter's Pride, which is one of my favorite kinds of knitting needles. And it's a set with 12 pairs of orange colored wood interchangeable needles, 9 crochet hooks, 6 memory-free swivel stainless steel cables, a 24-inch, a 32-inch, and a 40-inch, 12 end caps, 6 cable keys, 1 set of cable connectors, and 10 orange metal stitch markers in a square shape. So it was a full-on package. Very expensive. I hemmed and hawed. I mean, but how could I not, right? Like, how could I not get another set? So here are everything is orange. The end caps, the cables are in here. This is the little zip, oops, you're not seeing it. This is the little zipper in the front. And then here you open this up and there are all the crochet hooks. And they're just beautiful. And I'm not even much of a crocheter, but they have orange handles. And then when you flip this open, here are all the orange needles. They are round, they're not square. They're just, I haven't even used them. It's like, and I've had them for maybe a month. I just feel like they're too special, right? Like when you have yarn that's maybe too special. This is like a suede case. It's just so soft. It feels so luxurious. It will be great for travel and when I teach and I can just take this, but this is not what I want to use this for. Like, I don't want to travel and bang this up and then lose one of the pieces when I'm in a teaching class. Gonna be very selfish. Yeah, so I think that there are a few left. There were the last time I checked, maybe 2 days ago. Oh, look at that. Like, does it match my nails and my glasses perfectly? Of course I had to have it. Okay, I'm gonna stop feeling bad about the fact that that's my 4th interchangeable set. Then I purchased a mini skein set from Yarn Divas to make the new gnome that came out. So I went out to look for yarn. Remember, I knit my gnomes. Are they back there? No, they're on this side. Oh, they're behind there. Oh, they're hiding right back there. Anyway, so I knit those gnomes and they were so much fun to knit. And somebody put up a kit and then I thought, oh, those colors are cute, but they don't really go with my other colors because my other one was like a red, furry red tweed, natural harsh yarn and a green. And they weren't made for Christmas, but they just are real rugged. And so then I saw this one, which is real tweedy. And so I thought that if I'm gonna make another gnome. So I'm gonna make the new gnome. It is Yarn Divas Tea and Fiber. Oh, Canada Post. I can't even remember where I bought it. It's called the Ba Realis Fiber Snow Matter What Gnome Kit Along Kit. So you could go out and Google all that. Yeah. Anyway, I knew it came from far away, but I would like to try to pass that on. And it might be my over Thanksgiving little thing. I have so many flipping things on the needles. I made up a bunch of prize bags because I was gifted some items and I went through. I've been de-stashing. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm in a mood. I'm like ready to get rid of some stuff, right? I just am like, and when that happens to me, I need to declutter my house. And I have a beautiful home with lots of tchotchkes in it. There's stuff everywhere and I don't mind it, but after a while, it starts to feel like, every shelf doesn't need to have 3 things. And so I went to the basement. I went through my yarn stash in the big closet, not in the small one yet. And I just took out 12 different items and put those up for sale. All the yarn in the first round sold. And then I was like, wow, you could get rid of some more. So I had some single skeins and some things left that I've already knit with. So I'm not going to knit another thing probably with that same yarn. So I put those up and I have a few left here. So I'm going to show you those. And then I went to the basement, was putting stuff away. And we have two, when we lived in Virginia, I think the church or somebody was getting rid of long, like banquet tables, and we brought home two, and they're kind of long and heavy, and they were in our attic in Virginia, and now they're in the basement up against a stud wall, and because our basement's not finished, and we just use it to put stuff on. And I do have a bin down there of yarns that I want, that I've used for things that I want to keep for mending or whatever. There's a big thing, and then I have like the Christmas present box, you know, things I bought for Christmas presents on there. And Ross said to me, there's just so much stuff on that table. And I said, I know, because we keep throwing stuff. When you have a basement like that, you just say, put in the basement, put in the basement. So I went down there and I was kind of organized, moving things around to make it look like I'd done some work down there. And I opened this box and it had all these knitting figurines in it that I had collected years ago. And I had probably been in a mood, and I was like, you just can't have all these on the shelf. And there were like 13 of them. And I have some bigger knitting figurines that, like, of a mom right over here with a little girl. Well, I'll grab. So this is one. And I think I got this one as a gift from someone. I didn't write on the bottom who it was, but it's a mom, and she's got her needles, and then the little girl sitting next to her, and then the little dog, right? So I had Kylie and my dog and whatever. So this one's big, it's heavy, and it's called Gentili Collection. And then I have one Hummel that's big, and this is the yarn store from Hummel. And then it has the little girl with the balls of yarn and the little kitty cat. And then there's a bench that goes with it, and it's got a little kitty cat, and then it has like a hope chest that sits outside here. And this is called Quilting Bee. So it's really more sewing, but the girl has, there's yarn here and stuff. So the back of it has Quilting Bee on it. And it's Goebel, Hummel. Yeah, Goebel, 1999. So I have knitting pictures. I think I've done my knitting pictures around the house. So the house is just kind of gets overwrought with all the stuff I buy, like little, you know, things. So I just decided that the little figurines should go. And I was going to put them on eBay. I was going to put my yarn on eBay too. And then I thought, well, I'll give people on Instagram first chance. Like if I put up my stories and people don't want it, they can just scroll through, right? Well, then it all sold. And I thought, well, that's the better market, right? That's a better market for knitting stuff than eBay. Then I have over here a glass hutch, half wall little glass hutch. And it is full of pineapples, full to the brim. And if you guys remember, I had pineapple cookie jars on here and here and here. And in my kitchen, in one corner, there's like a plate from the top of the counter to the ceiling for cookbooks, but I had only one shelf of cookbooks, and then the rest were these pineapple cookie jars. I'm kind of an obsessive collector. Like if I have one and then I see more, I continue to purchase them. And I worked on that in therapy. I even remember her saying, well, what would happen if you didn't buy the next one in the series? And then in here I have curtains that have pineapples, but that little hutch is so full that you can't even see and enjoy. I'll take a picture and put it in here. So I think that's next. I think I'm gonna get rid of all the pineapples in there and maybe put some yarn in there, or just a few things that are out on shelves inside there so it doesn't look quite so junky in my house. Okay, now that we've had this little therapy session, I owe you all $300. yeah, I get in a mood, and I like my house to feel lived in and homey, but yeah, there's just too much stuff. So I'm selling the figurines. There are 3 left. You can go over to my Instagram to see if they're still left when this goes live. But here's the yarn, quickly. It's on my Ravelry page. You can go over. This is a Dream in Color skein of green. It's called Bitter, Color Bitter, 702, 400 yards fingering weight. I made a sweater and a striped sweater, and so I'm not going to knit with that skein again. And I made a sweater with this, and it was left over. This is Queen City yarn. It's not quite that bright, and it is called Noda Sock, and it's in the Tandoori color, and it is 463 yards. So 2 single skeins. Not everyone would use them together, but I would. And then the reason that this yarn was sitting here earlier is because this is another D-stash. This is Louisa Harding, Hold a Yarn. It's purple, absolutely beautiful. It's very soft. And there was a pattern for a coat, like a open, it actually almost looked like this. There was some design in it. I'll have to look it up. I mean, I'll put it in the picture in here. And I would still like to make it because it's like a duster. No, it's not called a coat. It's called a long cardigan. But I bought this years ago, and now I look at it and I think that is not a color I am going to you know, think about wearing all the time. It's pretty. The yarn is very pretty, but it's dark for me, right? It's just this really nice purple. They're 50-gram balls and 110 yards, and I think I have 20 of these. So there's a ton of yarn to make that, but you could make absolutely anything with it. It's very nice. Here is a pack of Zen Garden mini skeins. So there are 3 in here, and it is 600 yards. So each one is 200 yards, called Pansies. So 3 purples, really pretty. And then this is a bag. This is Jill Draper Makes Stuff. It is beautiful. It is rainbow. I bought this at Rhinebeck, but I have so many sets of rainbow, so many. And I'm just not a fan of knitting with fingering weight in sweaters. I would rather knit with sport. This is beautiful. This would make a shawl. This, you know, if you need a 6 skein shawl for Stephen West's knit along, right, or something like that, this would be, and I'm charging a half price on this, so this is like a huge deal. Each skein is 500 yards and 113 grams. So this is just a ton of yarn. And I think the colors are really, really pretty. I love this. Like, I just love this. And then I got the blue to go with it. So this is Vintage Denim, Cut Grass, Daffodil, Mrs. Robinson, Carrot Juice. So yeah, you can go over and take a look if you're interested in just grabbing some yarn from me. That would be great, because I would like to get it out of my office as well now. Now that I've moved everything, I have a shipping station in there. Russ says it's kind of hard to get behind the desk. I said, are you going to complain about the fact that I'm decluttering the house? You know, like, I have stuff, stuff everywhere. And I love it, but at one point it starts to just feel like too much. So you got to get rid of some of the stuff. I've been watching a bunch of stuff. I've been staying up late. I watched Painkiller, the Netflix documentary about oxy and meth and how the drug companies got America addicted to that. And it is so sad and so interesting. And they got these pretty young girls out of college to sell it to the doctors. And it is so wrong. So if you haven't watched that, there's several episodes. Then just the other night, I watched that new documentary called Naiad, about Diana Naiad, who swam from Cuba to Key West, Florida. And it took her like 4 tries. And she was over 60 when she tried again, and they had to figure out how to keep the sharks away and keep the jellyfish away, and she's not allowed to touch anyone or to touch the boat. or anything. And so it was very interesting. Then I'm still watching the Great British Bake Off. I love watching lots of football. My Vikings play Sunday night this week, and then the Kansas City Chiefs play Philadelphia on Monday night, and that's the two Kelsey brothers who play each other, and they've been all over the media because Travis is dating Taylor Swift, who's going to the game, and then Travis and his brother have a podcast, and they talk about, all this publicity that they're getting. And then his brother's a singer that for the Philadelphia Eagles football team, does a Christmas record CD every year to raise money for charity. And so both brothers are going to sing on it. So I really want to watch that Monday night game, because I think there'll be a lot of talk about the fact that they play on opposite teams. They played in the Super Bowl against each other. Mama had to wear a jersey from each boy, son. They're not boys, son. And then Taylor Swift is involved. So I want to watch that on Monday night. And then Sitting in Bars with Cake was a Netflix movie I watched last night. And I thought, oh, this is going to be so good. This girl wants to try to find a man. She's very introverted and shy and awkward, but she's an amazing baker. So her friends talk her into taking cake to the bar and offering people these pieces of beautiful cake to try to help her meet guys. And then it's based on a true story. And so I have to say that, trigger warning, there's a cancer situation, and it's very sad. And they try to keep it funny and lighthearted because one of the main characters, is very funny, and but it got sad. So stay away if that kind of thing would bother you. But the movie itself was quite good. And then I finished Who is Aaron Carter, and that took me a long time because the scenes were so intense with what is going on, and is she a spy, or what did she do wrong, and where did she steal from, and why are they beating her up? But she has this little girl she's protecting, and I just had a hard time. My empathetic nervous system just gets and so I can only watch one, and then a few nights later I can watch another one. So that's what I've been watching. I saw this great Fair Isle Advent M calendar on Ravelry today when I was looking for something else. And it's just really a cute pattern. So it came out last year, and you can make it into a cowl, but then if you're knitting up in the cowl, going to the dog park. So you can knit a cowl, and each little chart you do each day for 24 days. So it's just really cute. I think it's really neat looking. You'll create a stocking cap or a cowl in 25 days. It's stranded color work, which I just think is really fun to knit. So I'd like to get that on the needles. 4 audiobooks that I have listened to in the last week. I read Foster by Claire Keegan. If you know Claire Keegan at all, you know that she has won a ton of awards and writes very interesting short stories. This was a 1-hour book, and it had a surprise ending that I didn't understand. And I didn't, this young girl in Ireland is brought to live with this other family while her mom and all the children stay back because her mom's having another baby and she can go help this. And then she really falls in love with this other family. And it's called Foster. I want to give it away. Then I read The Gamble by Kristen Ashley. It's going to be one of my best books of the year. 25 hours. I'm going to read other books by Kristen Ashley. It's definitely a romance, but the storyline and the plot is amazing. This is not your typical romance novel, but it follows some of the tropes of romance, and it's really naughty. About 6 or 8 times. It's really naughty. They fall in love, and instead of having that, they fell passionately on the bed while they kissed. There's more detail than that, and he's just very open about telling her what he wants in a partner, and direct. And I'm driving down the road and I'm listening to this, and I'm just like, whoa. she moves to town from England. She's coming to America to get away from her fiance for 2 weeks to take a break to see if she should go forward with it, which she shouldn't. And she goes to Colorado and rents a big lodge by herself just to get away. She's a barrister, so she has money. And when she shows up in a snowstorm, the man who rents the house is there. And it was a mistake. It wasn't supposed to be rented. And he says, you can't stay here. And she says, I can't go back to town. And, you know, you see what's coming. But then she stays for a while and she meets the townspeople and different things happen. And I mean, 25 hours worth of, yeah, excellent. Then I finally read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which is by Gabrielle Zevin. And it's a story of the gaming world, but it's more a story of the relationships between these three characters, the two kids who write the code for all the games that they want. And then their first game gets really popular. But it's their relationship and how they grow up from the time that they're young, 20, they're still in college, and they go through the years. And it's been super popular. It's on all of the, you know, should be read, to be read lists, like highly highly recommended by people. And I didn't know what all the hubbub was about. It's very good. Highly recommend. Okay, the winner for this week's word project is Sherry Perry, 67. I have enjoyed your guests so much. I hope you will continue to share your love, your friends. It's fun to see their beautiful knits too. My to-do project list is growing. And so Sherry, you are getting last week's prize, which was the books and the little bag. And so I have that all ready for you to go here. The pattern books and the little bag, and then there's some toggles in there for you. And then next week's prize is going to be this giant bag of cotton yarn. There's enough in here to make probably 16 sweaters. No, I'm just kidding. It's Cascade 220, no, Cascade Ultra Pima cotton, my favorite cotton in the whole world. 2 giant balls, wound skeins, and a weight in here. And then lastly, in that prize package, I'm going to include the new Interweave Knits magazine. This is for the winter 2024. I love to look through it. I love to always read the ravelings at the back. It's always a story written by someone on the back page. There's some really pretty designs, but I thought I'll pass that on to someone, and it's pretty current, so I will put that in with the yarn this time for the prize giveaway. And I want you to use the word thankful because we're going into Thanksgiving here, and tell me what you're thankful for in the comments down below, because I'll really enjoy reading all of those. This is what I'm thankful for. That will be really fun for me. Honestly, I'm thankful for all of you. I am just tickled that you are all still here and you're really enjoying the guests that I'm having. And I want to thank you all for your kind words about having Renee on the podcast. And next, you're going to be seeing my dear friend Bonnie, and we go on and on and on. So this is going to be a long section, so you might want to take a little break. No, I tried to edit it down, but we did get into talking, and Bonnie asked some questions, some really good questions, so I wanted to answer them. So we didn't just show her favorite knits, we also did actually some talking. I did get hired to teach at Yarn Fest this year, so that's exciting. And so next is Bonnie, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. And I have a guest today. This is one of my dear friends, Bonnie, and she is fairly new in my life. We probably known each other 5 or 6 years, maybe.
I think, around that.
Something about that. And she is new to my knitting group because she's recently retired, and so she has joined our knitting group. She does live on the other side of the Twin Cities, so she does have to drive all the way out here. But she has joined our knitting group, and we have gotten together and traveled to a couple of events together and become much better friends in the last couple of years, especially since now she's retired. We're getting together even more. So welcome to Bonnie today, and she is bringing some sweaters for inspiration, so that's gonna be awesome. Tell us how you got started in knitting.
No, that's a great question. I think looking back, both my grandmothers, they did a little bit of knitting, but it was probably more crocheting. and I even did a bit of tatting
Oh, okay.
with the shuttle.
Yep.
So I kind of fast forward, trying to think now, probably 15 to maybe 20 years ago. I didn't really keep track of when I started into doing knitting, but I started with just doing the basic, like, make a washcloth and do the traditional scarves and so on. And then from there, I just started to do more and more knitting and really didn't go into making any sweaters until our first sweater camp. I'm trying to think, is that 3.5 years ago? The one that's through Darn It Anyway?
Yeah, it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it was about that.
Yeah, so what kind of interesting, because it's called sweater camp, I was not knitting on a sweater because I didn't have one yet that I knitted. Or were currently knitting at the time, but I was working on a scarf or whatever, and then
they weren't really requiring a sweater. Like, they called it sweater camp, but it's hard to work on a sweater at a event like that too, right? If you're working on a complicated sweater, there are lots of people that aren't knitting on sweaters. So if that is something that you're interested in going to, and you're thinking, well, I haven't knit a lot of sweaters, or I'm not a prolific sweater knitter, it wouldn't matter. It really wouldn't matter.
Right, I would agree. And then, so at that sweater camp, what I'm currentally wearing, I purchased the yarn from Darn It Anyway in Stillwater, and it's the throwback sweater from Andrea Mowry. And so kind of interesting enough, it's my first sweater, which involves color work, plus I steeked it, which I was nervous about cutting on something that I've knitted. And also because the yarn is Superwash Cascade 220, I actually sewed it too, because I knew that if I was going to steek it, I needed something to stabilize the yarn so it would not come apart.
Did you sew it yourself?
I sewed it myself.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I have never sewed one myself.
Oh, really?
Well, I have an old, like, home ec sewing machine. Mm-hmm. Like, it'll hem a pant if you have to, but it's not like, I've always taken it to someone, so that's a big jump in for a first sweater.
I when I do things, honestly, I do kind of dive in both feet first. I do.
When you started knitting and you were knitting scarves and washcloths, was it fun fur era or before that? Because
I think it was like maybe on the tail end of that.
Because I think that's how a lot of people started knitting, when we were all making those fun fur scarves, and novelty yarn was huge, and there were just lots of classes, and it was an easy thing to do because you only had to knit, and I think that's how a lot of people kind of learned. Yeah,
for sure.
And then, did I meet you at the first sweater camp?
No, actually the first time I met Cori was at one of her classes.
Okay.
I
didn't know if the class came after the camp and we had like kind of run into each other at the camp, or if it was at that class at Darn It Anyway.
Yeah.
Or was it at Knitting from the Heart?
No, it actually was the knit shop that was in Hudson. That's no longer there.
Oh, okay. Yep.
That was the first time with Diane.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then Cori's kind of teased me about this, but I took 3 of her classes. So not at the same place, but she was doing their 50 Shades of Sweater classes. But actually, first what started out with the 50 Shades of Shawls.
Yep.
And that's where I started taking those. I think I took 3 of those, and I think 2 of your sweater classes. And
you repeated them.
I repeated them, and I remember Cori asking me, why are you coming back again? And I said I love the inspiration, because I would see different things that I would want to knit, but you did such a great job of demonstrating how to wear the shawls.
Yeah,
and
there is that component in that class.
And then you had different variety too that you brought too. So
I didn't always bring the same things, but yeah, Diane had asked me to come over to that. It was like a community center kind of place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I taught several times there, but I do remember showing up, and she won't love that I say this, but Bonnie is a striking, right? Beautiful blonde hair, tall.
Oh, wow.
and then she would come and sit in my class. It was the person that I would remember, right? Like, I don't want to embarrass you, but
That's sweet, Cori.
No, but there are certain people in class, maybe even someone who asks a lot of questions, or like, I still remember to that day the woman in that class in Hudson who had the colored hair.
Oh,
the really bright colored hair, and she was so fun, right?
Right.
Like, if I saw her again, I would recognize her, right? Yep. And so I think you don't always remember everyone in your classes. If you have 20, 30 people in your class, and then people come up later, oh, I took your class, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't remember you, right?
Right.
But I do think I asked you, didn't you take one of my classes before? Like, I think I came up to you and said, haven't you taken this before? And then you were like, yeah, but like, I just enjoy learning about sweaters and all of that. Yeah.
For sure. And then the other thing that we share is the same birth year, not the same birth month. Cori's in April, and I was born in May of 1961. So that's kind of another thing that through getting to know each other, we shared that.
Yeah,
and
we share some things that we don't want to share.
Right, like, exactly. Some physical illness.
Yes, yeah, we do. And then tell us a little bit about what your career was briefly before you retired.
Sure. I was an occupational therapist that I specialized in hand, wrist, and elbow, shoulder therapy.
Yeah, so knitting.
There you go.
You were a knitting occupational
therapist.
Thumbs,
it was a big thing. Yeah.
Yes.
And I had a lot of knitters who came in, and honestly, most people who knit actually did very well with their arthritis in their hands for the most part. It's usually because they had something else going on and they would bring up knitting. But for the most part, knitting seemed like it was actually good for you, unless you overdo or your posture is not great. Yeah. Because then it can work against you too. So
but I have gone to Bonnie multiple times in the last however many years, talking to her about when I got my thumbs fixed, and with this most recent shoulder, and talking about her prior to it, and just getting information from her. And so that has been another thing we've done. But okay, so then we went to another sweater camp, and then we have been at classes together. We also went on the riverboat cruises together. Bonnie's going to share a little bit about her throwback, because I want to talk about the colors that you chose. Right. And I love, like, the fact that she's not an orange and the first sweater she knit is really an orange is just, shocking. But did you see this colorway in the yoke on somebody else's, or did you just pick them? Like, do you think you just picked blue and gray? I mean, you're a blue and gray person, right, definitely. And then maybe you're just looking for a contrast.
Yeah, it was, I honestly, I had my mindset on that I wanted some version of an orange or a rust type of a color. And then when I went to Darn It Anyway, someone there helped me pick out some of these other colors, because we were looking for something with some level of contrast.
Yes.
And I like to wear blue jeans, so I thought, you know what, that would work. I'll put that together, and that I can wear that with blue jeans. And I know I was talking to Cori earlier about this, that my palette tends to be more the neutrals. Yep. Like for years, black, gray, more like a softer, like a blue, and I love greens, lots of greens, but not so much the bright greens, more of a sage green or forest green, but more of the softer type of colors. And Cori's opened up my world. She's got me to step out of my box.
But that's really funny that then for your first sweater, you picked kind of a bright, rust. And I get that, it's beautiful, and I get that you would, want a high contrast, but it's very pretty with the blues with the oranges. And I do like blue with orange. And you couldn't have picked a reds or pinks, because there just wouldn't have been enough contrast in that yoke. So it's really nice.
I have to say, my husband, who is a football fan, though, told me he saw these colors and I should know what team it is. And
Chicago Bears.
Chicago Bears. He said, oh yeah, Chicago Bears. I'm like, no, I'm not doing it for Chicago Bears.
Or Denver.
I'm a Vikings fan. And everything, colors I pick, he tends to think of some type of a football team. Yeah, go figure.
Yeah, no. Amber knits a lot of orange and blue.
Oh, does she?
Chicago.
Okay. Oh, that's true.
Yeah. And Bonnie knows Amber.
Yes.
Well, you were at my house when we had a gathering of people for Shepherd's Harvest too.
Yes.
And so you've been around Matt and Stacy and Amber, that group as well.
And I met them the first time for the first sweater camp. Even though I knew Matt too, somewhat, but I felt like he was like you. I felt like a celebrity. Like, oh, there's Matt. Oh, I see him over there in the corner. So, and I joined you for a while at the table and got to know them.
And you've also been at ZK, not with me, but you've also gone to the Zombie Knitpocalypse in Rochester.
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So kind of the things that the Minnesotans go to. You've been to a lot of those things. Right. Okay, let's talk about this, because this is just, I don't know anybody that has knit this yet, and I just think it's stunning. It's so pretty.
Yep. So this is the field sweater by Camila. Is it Vod?
Yep, Vod.
Vod.
Yep.
And this has been on Ravelry when they have that front page that shows who I think they're kind of highlighting. And Prolific Knitter is the test knitter who I think is the one who devised where she was adding the pattern does call for mohair, but she did the transition of color. So that's why Camila put a Prolific Knitter's rendition on here.
Yeah, I'm
which
hoping
I love.
that
I absolutely
everyone
love
can
the
see
colors.
how pretty that is. It's completely raised. It's tons of texture, and then kind of marled with the two color.
Yep.
So talk about the construction. Top down?
It is top down, and there was I would say a fair amount of time in doing this top, what I think they refer to as kind of the wheat or the, I don't know if they reference it as pearls, but the kind of the wheat that comes down through here. So that did take me a fair amount of time, even though I do enjoy that to, quite a certain degree. But the other thing I was going to say about some of the coloring, because I've seen some other versions, and I think each to your own. Some people like a lot of contrast through here, but one of the reasons why I really like this is because it is that marled effect, because the background color, kind of that rosy type of mauve type of color, kind of blends in. Then it blends down into here, because I've seen other versions that are very distinct where this cuts off
where
here.
there's a line.
Where there's a line, and it looks like there's a big bar coming through, and that's fine.
Yep.
Maybe some people really like that, but I kind of like where it transitioned just a little bit more. And I would say if I was going to do it again, I mean, I really do like this version with the colors. I would kind of like to do it in a color of wheat coming down on maybe a darker color and then the wheat would maybe pop a little bit more.
Like
too.
a goldy brown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A goldy brown. And then the other thing is I tried to get the yarn that they advertised or went along with the pattern, and it was always sold out. I think it's EcoSoft Baby by Eichelberger.
Yep.
And I could not find it, so I went on site, and is it Yarn Sub?
Yep.
I went on site, which I've never used Yarn Sub before, so that was new to me.
Yarnsub.com. Yep. If you want to find a yarn that will work in place of another yarn.
Right. So you're looking
Substitution.
right.
Yep.
So you're looking for a similar weight for a similar amount of yards to Yep. So. And then, so what I ended up getting then was the Valley yarns off of Webs.
Yep.
And it's Whately, Whately is what I use for this main part. And it's made out of the same construction. So it's mostly alpaca and then with some cotton. And then the mohair here has some cashmere in it too. And that was a Rowan, I believe, mohair.
And
that
so
I used
what
with
weight
it.
of yarn is this? Figuring or sport?
I think it was meant to be more sport, although if you look at what was put on here for this Valley Yarns Whately, they said heavier, but I did the gauge with what they said, and it did come out correct for what was needed.
Okay. This is like that chainette type of yarn. So it definitely is, looks almost like it has been crocheted. It has a more plumpness to it, because I could see where you could call it fingering, but it plumps up or
more rounded.
Much more round. It's really soft.
It's very soft, very soft.
Yeah.
And the one thing I was going to say too, when you work with chainette yarn, which I have done a few other times, when you're connecting the yarns, I've done that special where you weave. You undo one end of the yarn, and then you make it like a string, and then you take that piece and you actually weave back and forth, and you connect it. And then I still did a little bit of the spit splicing, a little bit with it, and I just could continue right on. I love being able to do that. No knots.
So like a Russian join, kind of, where you take a needle and run it in? Like, how do you get the yarn up inside the other yarn when you weave it back and forth? So
what you do is, because it is chainette, so it's almost like a mesh that's going around.
Yep.
So you undo one end, so you got a big long string, and you thread that on your needle, and you go in one of the web part, and then come back. And then keep going back and forth as if you're sewing it in. So it's not like, I know what you're talking about, the Russian join where you go down the middle.
No, you're kind of like connecting two I-cord ends.
Yes.
Kind of.
Yeah, you're kind of sewing around a few different times, and then at the end, then I do run the yarn down, or that last little piece right down the middle.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, really nice. And then does this
good.
come in multiple options for sleeve length?
Yes, they did show it. They did show with the short, and then also with the full length sleeve.
Yeah.
I actually wanted a 3/4 sleeve, but I actually tore it back out because I did make it 3/4, and for some reason it looked out of kilter. And I think partly because I've got a really long torso. I'm 5'11", so I'm not short. And so by where this was hitting me, kind of like at my hip bone area, it just for some reason it looked a little bit off. So I just brought it back to short sleeve because I don't have any short sleeve sweaters. So
proportion, right? Yeah. And so it might be different for someone else, but for you it just worked.
Yeah, it was just for me, for my frame.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's just really pretty.
It is. Yeah. I think I.
But I did. Like the first thing I said to Bonnie is, "How hard was this?"
Yeah.
Because I couldn't figure out. Like I've looked at them online to see. Well, let's take it off and show up close, so that people can really. They might not know what we're talking about. So yeah, let's just hold it up. Can you see how that is just definitely a big texture stitch? Yeah, and it goes up. Yeah, it's a very interesting stitch.
And they did say in the instructions too, whatever you do, if you're in the middle of doing this top part, don't think you can just set it down and go, get a cup of coffee or whatever, unless you really mark where you're at, because you will be lost. And it's true because of how the patterns are. It's a great pattern. I will say that. I don't think it's for a beginner, but I think it's a great pattern.
Bonnie's going to hold up the picture here, and it does have 9 sizes, and the gauge is 20 stitches to 4 inches. And I would not have said that this felt like a worsted weight gauge, but they're knitting it at a more open gauge, and it calls for a DK weight yarn. On the pattern page on Ravelry. So it's just being knit at a very open gauge, which means that anything you can get to work is fine as long as you like the fabric. Right? Yeah, and hers in that picture, in that field,
yes,
it's just stunning.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, we have a really beautiful tweed sweater here. What's this one called?
This is The Forager by Isabel Kramer. And I really liked this one from the perspective of a couple of different things. There's this detail that comes down the front, and then it's also on the side. I don't know if you can see it. Actually, I just really remember now it's 2. You can see this mock cabling on either side coming down the sides there. And then on the bottom, there's this Latvian braid. It's done on both the cuff and on the hem, so there's a Latvian braid, which is honestly kind of fun to do. The yarn for this particular one is from Knit Picks. It's the City Tweed DK.
Oh, so affordable.
Yes, very affordable.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. So merino wool, alpaca, and Donegal tweed is what it's made of.
And then it's got a saddle shoulder. Yeah.
Yes.
And it has the cable on the outside of the sleeve as well. When you coming down from the saddle. I mean, I saw that it was on the outside, but it comes all the way down the saddle.
Yes.
That's really, and when a fitted shoulder, ooh, I like that a lot. I might have to make that.
Yeah, I thought that the detailing was very nice.
Yeah, really nice, because this shoulder would fit really well because it's not a raglan and it's not a drop shoulder, and so you'd have a nice fitted shoulder for sure. That's really nice. And this is that green you like. One of those greens.
Yep, one of the greens.
Kind of.
I'm drawn.
You said that this is a faux cable.
Yep.
So you don't have to use a cable needle, which means you are going to knit 2 together and then knit, and don't take them off and then knit into that first stitch again. So my easiest cable hat ever is made that same way, and so there's you get the cable look, but you don't have to make cables. It's a very nice kind of cheap way to make a beautiful cable. And since you have so many of them in this, it wouldn't be a lot of work.
Right.
It wouldn't be a lot of work to do that. That would be really nice.
Right. Yeah, and I would say this was a fun sweater to make, definitely with the construction way that it's made.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that top and how that would work. So that's fun. Excellent.
Great.
Sweater number, 4? Are we on 4, 3 or 4? Whatever.
Yeah, so this is another Isabel Kramer sweater, and what got me started on this was actually one of the podcasts with Knitting Along with Kim and Jonna.
Yep.
Which is a couple of gals out on the East Coast.
Yep.
And they were doing a knit along for Isabel Kramer and also Mayak yarns.
Yes.
And this color combination is what Kim was going to do, and when I saw it, I'm like, oh, I like that. I'm gonna have to do that, because for me that was another of stepping out of the box. So like, so once again, I wanted to try something a little different. And so
But
that's
you
what I did.
totally thought of me.
Yes, I did. You were correct. Yes, you were correct.
I mean, the orange and raspberry, right? Like,
Yeah, so totally
had
Cori.
to have be like, well, Cori would wear that, right? If I don't like it, no.
Yep.
Because, yeah. Okay, so tell us about the construction here.
Yeah, so it's been a little while since
Yep.
I've made it, but I do believe it's still top down.
Yep.
3/4 sleeve on here. I really did like the detailing on the neckline, how that all came together. I thought that was a lot of fun to actually make that for how it
Pick
was.
up and then do the ribbing and then do the decreases right here. I
Yep, the
assume?
decreases, right, yep, kind of here too.
Yeah, because this is really nice. You did a really nice job on this right here.
Thanks, Cori.
You know, when you come down and you're making these, like sometimes one side can be uneven from the other side because they're not, both those decreases aren't super symmetrical.
Right.
And no, this is really pretty. I mean, the design probably had something to do with it, but the execution is really good too.
Oh,
and then does the pattern have the stripe in the ribbing? Is that
That's a
called for?
great question.
Because you
let me
have a
take
stripe
look.
in both of your ribbons, and she did the opposite here. So this got orange with it's kind of purple. I guess it's not really raspberry, but it's a little purple. And then here you have the purple with the orange.
They did show it.
Okay.
On here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you did the longer sleeves on this one, kind of
3/4.
the 3/4. Yep.
Or 2/3 or whatever. Yeah, around there. And then I was going to mention about the yarn, the Mayak yarn. One of the things that attracted me to it, it's a combination of yak and silk.
Yeah.
But that it's from the ethically sourced from nomadic Tibetan tribes.
Yeah.
But then it's processed in the foothills of the Italian Alps. But the main thing that got me was the nomadic tribes. And I think just the whole story behind the whole Mayak line is, I think, something that's great. I mean, it definitely costs a little extra money to do it, but then I felt like I was helping
supporting.
out. Yep,
for
supporting.
Sure. Yep.
So it's
that's
one of
how
those
I felt
times.
when I knit my muscle burl that's right back there.
Oh, yeah.
I bought Mayak.
That's right.
And that was my first. I had owned Mayak, but that was my first time knitting with it. I will be knitting with it again. I loved, and the feel of this is lovely. Mine had more mohair in it, but the drape and the quality of the yarn is just different.
It's
just
it does drape
it's
really
better.
nice.
It's just better. It's a more pleasurable knitting experience using Mayak, which is more expensive, but Paula does retreats in the Italy area and then sourced that yarn and has done all that work to get it here. And I think they gather you can just bring a bunch of them in and shear it off, right? Like it is a more hands-on process of gathering, and I think in with their herds. I mean, I think if I'm speaking very off the tongue here. It's a substantial subsistence for them, but it wouldn't be they don't have other forms of income, which just makes it so much. Right. So if you need an excuse, Bonnie and Cori are saying, go buy yourself some Mayak.
Right,
because I have, and we never said the name of this. You and I said it, but...
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yep, it's an interesting name. It's another Isabel Kramer's pattern, the Dingley Dell, which I find is a very interesting name. And I'm not sure how she comes up with her names, if she has a specific, I'm not sure, but...
I don't either, but...
It's fun.
Since Kim and Jonna said that they were making the Dingley Dell, every time they had a podcast, which I don't always watch all podcasts, that word, the Dingley Dell, rang in my ear over and over again. I'm like, that is the funniest name I've ever heard of for a sweater. And I myself also thought, I have to make that because even the name is just cute or quirky or whatever. Yeah. But this is just lovely. Oh, and we want to talk about the neck.
Yes. So when I've worn this, I've worn it with like a little white camisole or something underneath because the neckline does come down quite a bit. And it was a little bit bigger than what I wanted it to be. And then I had talked to Cori about, what could we do about that? And your suggestion was...
to take some yarn and run it across the back neck because it was falling off your shoulder. The neck hole opening, which often happens for a V-neck, gets too big. And if your shoulders aren't wide enough, you start getting this where it just feels like it's always falling off. Mm-hmm. A solution for that is to make the V shorter in the beginning. But that requires a ton of math and figuring out how to make that happen, to make it going under the purl stitches on the back of the neck, and you snug it up and give it something, the rest of the sweater, something to hang on. So Bonnie also could have, when she picked up stitches and went across the back, she could have picked up fewer stitches across the back neckline. You don't want it to gather though, so that, you know, that can get a little bit, if you are worried about it being too wide, picking up fewer stitches will also suck that in, right? So that your ribbing is pulling in across that back. So maybe instead of it going from, you know, 9 inches wide, it's 7.5 inches wide because you picked up less stitches. But the biggest, easiest solution, which I've done for a number of sweaters over the years, is just to take a piece of yarn. You can take it all the way out across the shoulder if you need to, or just across the back neck. And
That's
then that helps solve your issue.
Sure. So a way to fix it after the fact.
Oh,
you're
yeah.
not going to take it apart or...
No. Yeah. You just, and you can use the same yarn as long as it's strong yarn. If it isn't strong yarn, like if it breaks really easily, like a, you know, kind of a single ply or something, then you could take a similarly colored yarn that was a cotton or something stronger and use that to be your stabilizing. But that just holds everything up. It'd be like if someone just walked around behind you and held those shoulders together, right? And nothing was falling down. So,
yeah. And then the other thing I was just going to mention too, when I was making this, I had asked whether or not I could spit splice yak. And I think I first reached out to Kim and Jonna because of them being on, you know, having their podcast. And they didn't think so at first, but Paula chimed in from my yak, and she said, yes, definitely you can. She said, you can spit splice it. So that's what I ended up doing. I think the question was maybe because of the amount of silk that was in there, because I think silk will not, the same. But she said there's enough yak that it will.
Oh, yeah. I have to go buy some of this. It is
nice.
the softest. Oh. Pink. We have pink for a gray and blue lady.
Yeah, that's right. I'm really stepping out. Yeah.
You have really done a lot of color here. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us a little bit about this one. What's it called?
Yeah. So this is another Isabel Kramer. So I have 3 in a row here. This is the Aldous. Yep. Aldous. And the yarn is the Malabrigo Rios, the English rose color, which I have always really liked.
Yeah.
I've made several baby sweaters out of it for little girls, and it's just a soft, very nice yarn. It was really fun to work with. Just like the last sweater, actually the 2 sweaters before. So the kind of the line, there's a line coming down on the side here and through here. And then it divides out.
Yep.
Coming through here. Yep. And then this also has, I wanted something kind of simple, that kind of Latvian braid that's on the sleeve. And then another thing I guess I didn't mention before, I spend the extra time of doing I don't know if it's considered twisted rib, but what I do is I knit through the back loop on all my knit stitches, and then my purl is just a regular purl. It makes for me a neater ribbing. And I know it takes extra time, but I do it for all of my ribbing now. I just don't even look to see if the pattern says to do that. I just do it. That's and that's just one of the things I've just started doing because I like a neater. It does really
make the knit stitches pop.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
You really get a raised knit stitch.
Yes.
And the purls really recede.
And it's probably hard to see on this, the end on what I did here. It was a particular type of bind off that is actually sewn into it. It's kind of like a Kitchener stitch, but it's not really truly Kitchener.
Yep.
But it's
is
just
that Italian?
They didn't refer to it. Actually, they didn't even. They just referred to it as an invisible bind off, and it's one of those I looked up on YouTube, and I'm sure, like many of you out there, you look up things on YouTube and see what you can find. And I just liked it because it had some give, but it looks like the stitches kind of go up and over.
Yep.
On the other side.
So you also have that braid at the bottom.
Yes.
It's probably really hard to see because we're kind of far apart, but from the camera. But there's definitely it's definitely a shaped sleeve, and then you've got these. So it makes it more of a tailored look, right? It's the whole sweater
like
it's plain, but it's more tailored, right? To just give it it elevates it a little bit, I think, for sure. Yeah, and Malabrigo, it's just such a beautiful yarn.
And the one thing I was going to mention too, along with this, which I'm still on the learning curve, is sizing. I swatch ahead of time, and I will admit, even though I do swatching in the round, when it's in the round, I make sure I do that. But most of the time, I don't block my swatches, and sometimes it comes back to bite me.
Yep.
And I think this is a superwash yarn, the Rios, and I think this grew. I think it's quite a bit longer, which I'm tall, so maybe it'll be fine in the end. But I think I need to take more of that into account, factoring in what type of yarn am I working with, and you know how important it is to do that blocking with your swatches. Do you block your swatches?
Yes. What I always say is knit a swatch, throw it in the sink, start the sweater. Go ahead, start the sweater, right? Then check your gauge the next day, you know, lay out your swatch, check the gauge. And if it's off and you've done the ribbing, you can change needle sizes at that point. And it's not going to affect, like if you just want it cast on tonight, right? Like you
gotta do it.
You know, you're probably not going to get that far in your sweater. You're not going to knit half of it. You can fudge at that point and you could still save it, right? And if you do some of that, if you do some knitting first and you didn't block your swatch or you didn't even swatch, you can use the sweater as a swatch. And I said this with Renee too. You can always block a sweater on the needles. You can just throw it in water, put it in a towel. It doesn't have to be off the needles because you're going to block it again later anyway. So if you really don't, if you hate swatching and swatches lie to you all the time because you knit differently in a small piece than you knit in a big piece, then your best bet is to start the sweater.
Right.
Get this far down, block it, and then adjust from there. So like, what if it really grows at that point, really grows? Then shorten up your armhole, right? At that point, say, well, it grew way down. So instead of me following the directions for the armhole, I'm gonna not knit another inch because it grew. Like you can fix the sweater as you go if your gauge, if you've developed the, you know, the issue that my gauge is off because of the blocking.
That's a great point,
Yeah, so I just think that there used to be just such a pushback on, you know, blocks making a gauge because it doesn't always work out.
Right.
But I think that using a gauge swatch to know what needle size to kind of start with, and then using the sweater as your guide to lay on another sweater, to wash and lay on another sweater, to see where you're at, to check how much it's grown. Like if you get down to here and you're thinking, wow, that seems really long, is this where I should divide? Maybe you have to rip out an inch and then divide. Like you could change that because it grew so much. Right.
Because I do think this grew actually quite a bit after I washed it. I was careful not to, like, you know, to hang it or anything. I made sure that I kept it really flat. It still ended up growing.
But the other issue with superwash is that once you wash it, it's going to grow, but you can throw it in the dryer and zhuzh it up.
That was my other question because I've been nervous about doing that because I have a few sweaters that they're just a little too big. And I know you just have to be careful to not do it too long or too high of temperature and so on.
You can't put it in and walk away for 30 minutes, right? You have to set the timer on your phone and go back in and check it 4 minutes later, and then you'll be like, why am I checking this? Because nothing's happened. But that's, you know, that's what you do.
It warmed up or
and then,
whatever.
And then you check it, you know, at 8 and then 12, and you'll know, you'll be able to tell, is it starting to react? Is it feeling like it's, you know, getting smaller? And there's definitely a magic point with superwash where you're like, oh yeah, I can continue to dry this quite a bit and it's going to be fine. And I'm going to lay it out and it's going to have bounced back to that size that I originally wanted it to be. And I do that with a lot of sweaters.
So that for superwash, but what if you have a non-superwash yarn? It's too big. You just have to be just a little more careful. You just have to get a little earlier.
So sometimes I'll spray it and not wet it because then it's not as wet. It's not as heavy, so it doesn't take as long in the dryer. Right?
Because you don't want it to felt or anything like that.
Right, for sure. And then sometimes like somebody's body got too long, but the sleeves didn't. You can just wet the bottom half. You don't have to wet the whole sweater. You can just spray the part that, like I have people a lot say that their arms are too tight. right? The arm is too tight that they put on.
That would
and
be me.
so I will say, you know, I'll definitely say, have you tried to block it bigger only in that section? You don't want the sleeve to grow, but you want to see if you can get a little more give there. You know, I literally have taken a section of something and put it underwater, just that much.
Really?
And to see if I can get it to zhuzh it, you know, in that, you know, like the brim of a hat. I want, the brim's not folding up quite far enough. It could fold up a little more, but the hat fits perfect. Right? You can manipulate that yarn because you have give and you can wet.
It is true.
It's probably all like a purist, which we all know I am not, would say, what is she talking about? Like an old school knitter, like who's a perfectionist, like Rosemary, my mentor, would be like, you know, we're not all that person.
No.
And so if we need to make it work for us, and I have sweaters that I will not wear the way they fit right now, and so I'm not out anything if I put that in the washer and the dryer and see what happens, because I can't wear it right now because it is, you know, hanging down too far.
Yep,
or
not going to work.
Yeah, so I may as well. And it is nerve-wracking to put a sweater in the wash that you have not washed before on delicate and pray, right? But you can also do it in a sink and hand wash it. But with that whole thing comes the wringing out and the stretching of a really wet garment. So I oftentimes will wet the towel, sopping wet, and roll the sweater in the wet towel. Because the sweater gets wet but not soaked.
Okay, that's good to know.
And then you're not like lifting this really heavy. You have a wet sweater,
right?
You know, and I leave it rolled up for a long time, but it's not going to stretch out.
Okay,
you know, and sometimes the towel is wet enough that I will squish it into the sweater, right? And that makes the sweater quite wet but not soaked.
Okay.
And then I can dry it, because we're not starting at something that's going around in the dryer like kerplunk.
Right.
Like, because it's so wet and heavy. You don't want that.
Okay.
And you can't even really treat your sweaters that way.
So how long do you leave it in the wet towel?
Several hours sometimes.
Like really?
I'll walk away. Because I'll check, and like I can check, and I can just open it up and like I roll it and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's not even, because it takes a while. You know how when you lay a sweater on the top of the water and you're waiting for it to sink, it can take forever, right? It doesn't absorb, especially wool.
Right.
Wool is water resistant,
right?
So it can take a long time for it to sink. So it can take a long time for it to absorb. So I just let it sit in the sink, like I roll it and then I twist it and make a bun, and then sit it in the sink. And then sometimes even the next day, Ross will be like, "There's something woolly in the sink back there." It'll be like, "Oh, I forgot my sweater," right, or whatever, because you know how wet.
And then it's still fine. It's not a big deal.
No.
Okay.
No, because It's this. I haven't run more water on it. The towel will start to dry some, and so it doesn't ever get. I should just do a whole video on that sometime in my laundry room where I'm showing that whole process and kind of how I do it. I think there are people in the world would be like, what does she think she's doing? But I do it. And so
that works great.
I've never been anything but honest with you guys. and I'm not a person that likes to rip out and re-knit.
No.
I want to fix it.
Yeah, well, that brings up we talk about, are you a knitter that you process or product?
Yeah.
And are you said for the most part your product, correct?
Oh, yeah. I just want the thing.
Yeah. And I'm probably more so process. Well, compared to you, yes.
Oh,
by far.
yes.
No, I enjoy process, and I have no problem ripping something out. I've done it a fair amount of times because I figured, you know what? I got the rest of my life that I love knitting, and this is all a learning curve. I'm going to learn something from this, and I'm going to do it again. Yep. So, but granted, I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I do want the product too in the end. So
yeah, I get impatient with process, right?
Okay.
I'm like that, and so I get impatient with stockinette in the round for a whole body, right? Like I'm just like, I just want this over.
Right.
When there's stuff going on,
right?
I love the process of color work. I love the process of cables. I love,
construction. Of how things
texture,
are coming together.
But when it is, stockinette in the round, I burned out on that.
Yeah.
Then it's not process anymore. Then it's just like, where can I take this with me while I'll be doing something else
Right.
that I can knit on it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually brings up another point, and I know we've talked about this before, but I know everyone talks about sleeve island. I get it. Sleeve body, because to me, when I'm going from, once I've gotten my, bottom of the sleeve and I'm coming down, I mean, this takes me a long time, and I can do that when I'm out with friends or, with the other knitters or so on, which is great. But when I'm on here, when I'm doing my sleeve, and it's just my own personal opinion, because of the decreases that I have to be timing when I'm coming up the next, at least it keeps my mind engaged to a certain extent. Like, okay, I got to watch how far much further down before my next decrease. And I'm trying to match it to the other sleeve and so on. To me, this is more sleeve, or body island, I should call it, than sleeve island. But that's just me. I just find that curious.
No, for sure. This is a ton of knitting, right? And I think for people, and I think that became a catchphrase, right?
Sure.
People who don't like to knit 2 socks are often people that don't like to knit 2 sleeves.
Okay.
Like they just don't want to do the second thing again.
Right.
And I think they would be the same people who wouldn't want to knit a front and a back.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
They just, like, I finished the front, I did the thing. Now
done.
I have to do a whole nother back.
Right.
They want to do it in the round and get it done more quickly. So I think that whole, one sock syndrome, single sock syndrome, and the sleeve island, like, I'm on sleeve island, they're taking forever. Sleeves can take forever, because if you opened this piece out, it would be, as wide as like 3/4 of the body, and it's often longer than the body. Mm-hmm. So it is almost the front side of a sweater and the back. So like, and it is definitely probably longer than most people make their socks.
Right.
So it is a lot of knitting.
It is a long time.
It is a lot of knitting. And I think it has to do with most people getting done and being frustrated that I have to do another one. Right. And back in the day when everything was seamed, I probably feel like there were a lot of people who were like, finished the back was this huge piece, and now I have to do the front too.
Okay.
That's personal. I have no idea if that's really how people feel, but I kind of get that from people. Kind of, it's just doing another one.
Right.
But yeah, sleeves and bodies are boring if there's nothing going on. Really boring.
I agree.
But doing sleeves and bodies with a lot of stuff on them is slow. Right? Right? Like, Matt and his all over cable work on every piece he knits, right? That's slow going. Right. That's why most people don't knit the sweaters like Matt knits.
Right, because he enjoys it.
Oh, yeah. He loves it. And he's not slow at it.
No, he's fast.
So I do think.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this before, but I'm trying to think of this as on all of Isabel Kramer's construction, but just that little purl that comes down the sides, and also on the sleeve, there's a purl stitch that comes down the side. And correct me if I'm wrong, it's to keep the piece from kind of twisting a little bit. So like, I think Matt's talked about this before, like a t-shirt that can kind of twist as opposed to one that actually, not too many t-shirts that are seamed, but they could be. But is that the reason why that it's construction wise, it keeps it a little more stability to it?
I don't know on a fingering weight sweater if that purl provides stability, but it certainly provides a side seam. So I do think that it's they call it, a faux seam, and then that in your mind keeps you from twisting it because you know where it belongs. Whereas if this is all plain, you might put it on and not even realize that you've pulled it forward because there's nothing there to tell you. And there's nothing down here to tell you that that's the side, unless you've done like a split hem. Okay, so
it won't twist on its own for a sweater. It doesn't.
Absolutely, a sweater can twist, but it would be biased then. Like your knit or your purl is bigger or smaller. I think that knitting would be biased if you were doing a texture stitch. But I don't think that one purl stitch keeps it from. But Isabel Kramer is brighter than me, and it might. So Isabel, let us know when you watch this.
Construction,
Isabel,
right? Yes.
Let us know if that is why you put that, or you just like the look of
there
that.
You can see that line. Yep.
Yeah. So definitely provides the look of a seam.
Right.
But there's no seam there. Yep.
Okay.
We have redressed the mannequin, and this is a long sweater coat or jacket.
Yep.
What's it called?
This is The Common Ground by Elizabeth Smith. And I did this last year as a 4 and 12 knit along through Darn It Anyway in Stillwater. And the yarn is Eco Plus, or Eco Plus. I think it's Eco Plus Cascade yarn. Comes in big, huge inks. It's a Aran bulky weight. It was a fun knit. You know, you can decide whether or not to do a hood with it. I chose to do the hood because I live in a house with a very hot man. He would like the fact I said hot man. He's very warm.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, he keeps the temperature down, and he's also very frugal. So I like the option of throwing a hood up if I'm a little chilled while I'm knitting. And that works out well for me. So I actually made this quite a bit longer than what the original pattern showed. I think it showed like there's some, it might be a little bit hard to see, but a little bit of lace work that's in here. And it goes all the way around to the back and back over to this side here. I think they showed it ending about, you know, just a few inches down below that, but I made mine longer enough to kind of...
Yeah, so we have gartered to here, and then there's stockinette, and there's this pretty section of lace, and then she did more stockinette.
That was fun. I, you know, wanted something that was warm that I could throw on, kind of like a house coat maybe, or you know, something along those lines that would be something...
Yeah, almost like a robe.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think it's a raglan sleeve. But yeah, that was a fun one to do.
Tell everybody what 4 and 12 is.
Oh yeah, so 4 and 12 is something that Darn It Anyway, it's my local yarn store in Stillwater, Minnesota. 4 and 12 is that every quarter they come out with typically a new sweater. I think they do other types of things like hats and other things, but there is typically it's a sweater. So every 4th quarter they come out with a sweater. And if you decide to do the sweater that they're highlighting for that quarter, you get 10% off on their yarn that you purchase in the store. You don't have to purchase it if you don't want to, but of course they would encourage that. And then what's nice about it is they usually have group get-togethers so that you can either go in and knit with other fellow knitters, or I don't know if they still do some of the Zoom type meetings or not. Probably not at this point, but
I haven't seen it, but I know that they're still, I get their newsletter. And so if you get on their newsletter list, and then do they do like a prize or pictures at the end or anything like that? You know,
that's a great question. I'm not positive on that. I'm not sure if they have done that or still do that
So right now they would be in the last quarter. So it would be their 4th sweater this year. I don't know which one they're doing, but I've seen. Oh, you do know?
Yep, it's Camila Vod. It's another one of her sweaters. It's the Magnolia sweater with the crew neck. I actually I was gonna maybe join in, but I wanted to do the cardigan. Partly because I'm that age, you can probably see my red face. I get a little overheated at times, so sometimes I'm cold, and sometimes I'm, you know, I
need to throw your sweater off.
I need to take my sweater off, or at least have it open a little, and that's just enough to air out. So, but yeah, they do a great job of creating community, of bringing people together.
If I didn't live so far away, I'd be over there all the time. They have such a great space and
community room.
Yep.
Yep, they have a community room that's hooked up to the store. It used to be a restaurant. I think it was an Esteban's before, and they opened up a partial wall and had this great meeting space. So much larger than you would have for most knitting stores. Yeah,
they got a grant from a local church to teach beginning knitting and to have to help open that space. I've done a video because I went over there for the Lobby Enemy thing. So you've seen the space. There's a fireplace, and when you walk through.
Bring this up here. So this is obviously a slouchy type of a hat, and this is a hat that I've worn. Gosh, I think maybe close to 10 years now. It's called the Soft Waves hat, and it's made with one of the Noro yarns that has cashmere in it.
Maybe you can rest it on this.
Yeah.
And you won't have to hold it up, but they'll be able to see it. Because I can hold it with my left hand. Yeah.
And then you can kind of, it's like most hats, it comes through into the detail there. One of the things that I did, because this is a self-striping type yarn, they would say to go so far, and then those are probably yarn overs that I did in through here. I timed the yarn overs as a transition of the color of the yarn. I didn't do it exactly when they said to do it. And I kind of liked that aspect of it. I don't think they make the same type of cashmere yarn, and I know you can probably post that what the actual name is because I have that.
Yeah, I'll put it down on the screen. But you got more on eBay.
I did. I bought more on eBay.
You can find the yarns that are discontinued.
Yep.
But so Noro cashmere.
Yes, and it one skein. They purposely made it so you could do it as a one skein hat, and I think the price point anywhere from $30 to $40. So for cashmere, I think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, it's a fun knit to have, and I wear this. You can see there's blue in there. There's green. That's that sagey type of green that I like so much, and just the neutrals. So this is totally me. So I wear this in the house, going out to get groceries. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, you look good in hats with your long hair too. Oh. What she bought.
No, will this show the right way for the?
Yep.
So,
it does. Yep.
This is Cori's from her Knit Words book, and I had done this for my local yarn store, Darn It Anyways, and I'd done this small pillow here. What is it? Cast on pearl, love yarn, increase, decrease, and my bind off I put on the bottom.
Yep.
So that was one of the suggestions, I think, for the pattern, because I think it might have been flipped the other way. So that
People
it looks
said,
like you cast on the top and bind off at the bottom, even though you start the other way, which is fine. But this was one of the pillows we had for that. I mentioned the community space that Darn It Anyways has.
And they have a couple of orange chairs in there.
Yes, orange and teal. Yep. And so it goes well with the palette that's for that. And then
not only did she make that one, look at this one. Oh my gosh.
It's pretty big. And so same thing here, the starting with the cast on slip knit. But this I put together with from Cori's book with the individual letters. So I had to try to do the right spacing through here, and included the heart, so I had something to kind of go between, the words here, especially with carrying the floats and that type of thing. But the one thing I was going to mention here too was that it's the first time I've ever done duplicate stitch on top, because I just felt like it was all originally this color and I didn't feel like it popped enough. So then I just went one off and did the duplicate stitch going all the way through to add a little bit.
So clever. So clever. In the book, there is a blank chart and there are all the letters. So you can, make any word you want, right? And the chart. But you do have to figure out how to center it on whatever. So if you're putting it on a hat, you have to know how many stitches around or that kind of thing. But this, I just love that. I don't think you could have done it with 3 colors in a row, like knit the blue and then knit the blue, and then maybe no one would have wanted to knit 3 colors in a wet row. So the duplicate stitch was absolutely the way to go. So Darn It Anyways is the name of the store that we have talked about all the time here.
And there's a bit of a story behind that. The reason why I made this for the store was that the second sweater camp that I was going to be going to, I'd signed up for it and paid my dues for it, and then missed the deadline of when I potentially would not go. And the reason why I couldn't go in the end, I ended up becoming sick and had breast cancer. Don't mind sharing that with you all.
Yeah.
And I called the store and said, I really can't come to your event. I have some surgeries planned. This is during COVID. COVID had settled down somewhat, but we still was some of the masking and so on. And they were so kind to me. And they said, even though I missed the deadline, I explained my situation. They refunded my money. And Darn It Anyway, their store, make me emotional right now talking about it. They were so kind to me. They sent out the gift bag. And even though I had not paid for it, they gave me all the gifty things that come with coming to their camp. And then they also made it available to me so that I could view it from home. So I told them, I said, I live in Woodbury. There's another lovely store in Woodbury that I could go to. And I've gone there too. But I said, you are my local yarn store for life. So they've been so kind to me. So I wanted to give something back to them. So I made this for them for their community room. Sure. And they have done other things I know for other people that have been sick or have lost someone. They're very, like I said, community based and just really care about their customers.
This is one I really want to knit. I was kind of jealous when she brought it out of the box over there. So tell us what this little bit about this.
Yep, this is the Carbeth cardigan by Kate Davies, and it's interesting construction, something I've never done before. Cori's, I'm sure, has done some of these, but where you knit the sleeves first. So you knit up from the sleeves, and then it's been a little while since I've done it, so I won't speak to it completely, but I think from the knitting the sleeves, then eventually they come together, and then it must be adding on from there that creates that kind of V. And it's hard to see it here, but it's V in here, but it also does the exact same thing in the back. It actually has a really nice construction with that V. So you can see from here down on both sides that it's got that construction of the V on either side. It's with Aran, I think, bulky weight yarn. This is the Cascade Eco Plus. That it's a kind of a nice, fairly nice wool, I think.
Yep, yeah.
A little bit of pilling I had with my other sweater with that, but even this pills here too. So,
yeah,
you know, but not too bad.
No, it's probably not plied really tightly. But I have, and I probably have showed this on the pod. No, maybe not. I have Ella Ray Superwash chunky yarn in all the colors because I love that yarn. It's been discontinued forever, and I have green and gold and dark red, and I have a bunch of colors, and I'm making a striped sweater out of it, you might remember. But I saw someone do these in one color and this in a color and this in a color.
Oh, wow.
And so they did one sleeve and it came up and one sleeve and it came up.
Fun.
And that's been
you.
in my mind forever, right? Like
That's
that
Cori.
I want to make that so bad. So because I don't have enough of that yarn, that Ella Ray chunky, I probably have enough of other yarn to make it in a solid. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's what you could, because you'd have a couple skeins of each. So if you have like leftover worsted or leftover chunky, you could whole worsted double or use it and do this combination. You said you just finished this in the spring.
Yes, I finished at the end of the spring, so I haven't had a chance to wear it yet. So
Which is such
I've got
such a bummer.
Yeah, I'll have time now. And the one thing I was going to say about the buttons, I try to give as much of business to my local yarn store. So I went in to look for the buttons that I thought would work for it, and there was never enough. Like if I needed 6 or 7, they had 5, or and so I ended up ordering them online, getting off of Amazon, and I think they're just beechwood maybe.
They're
type of a button.
Perfect.
But they worked for it, and
Yeah.
I didn't pay that much for them, but
yeah, they're really nice. They're perfect for
great. I struggle with some of the woolly wools because of my allergies.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I'm in a yarn store, I'll sniff the yarn and put it by my face and see if I react. And sometimes I can tell, and sometimes I can't tell. But that would be my own thing. But I don't think this I do. I think it's actually been. And another way I can tell is as I'm working with it.
Yeah.
I can tell right away whether or not it's something I'll be able to wear.
Yeah, because aren't there something that you absolutely can't knit with?
It was something that I purchased for I'm going to try to remember the name of the sweater that I had gotten. It's a really woolly wool that's from Canada. And I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with it. We thought maybe I could wash it, and maybe I've heard of putting conditioner in it to see if maybe it's the lanolin or something in there that I'm reacting to. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I can just tell right away that I'm reacting.
Remember we talked about it because Bonnie is another person that I went to her house and helped her put her stash on Ravelry.
Yes.
And so Renee was here on Monday. We talked a little bit about that, but she had it all out and all stacked up and said, I'm embarrassed by how much I have. And I said, we all have too much, right? Like if you're a knitter, Renee had too much, I have too much. We all have so much, but so much easier to use it when it's on Ravelry and you can look and see what you have. Yeah. And then you're not buying more because you forget that you have something that would work perfectly fine for.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of points about this, and I'm sure Renee probably mentioned it too, but by going through that whole process, it was really good for me to put my hands on everything that I own. And rather than putting it away in another bin and like, oh yeah, out of sight, out of mind. And then I'm like, oh, do I own that? You know what, that type of thing. So it really made me feel like I kind of reconnected with my yarn. And some of it, I was like, I bought this. Like I'm looking back at it going like, have my tastes changed that much? You know?
Yep.
And then Cori had great suggestions for selling it and, you know,
Yeah.
that type of thing too. But the other nice thing that I kind of took for granted was that once it was on Ravelry, then when I opened up our pattern on Ravelry, it says right in there, you have this in your stash. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I do. And then I'd go look at it. I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that yarn. So it's, you know, there is some process with it. It is some time consuming, but once you're done with it, I would say it's very gratifying.
Yeah. So, because it probably took you quite a few hours to get it all out and organized for me. But then that day that I came, I was there maybe 4 hours, maybe. And then I never went back. You finished because we got the process set up. You finished, and then you got rid of some stuff. You were like, this stuff I'm never going to knit with, and so you put it in a bag or whatever. And then you finished.
And then I ended up just finishing with only putting sweater quantities in. Yeah. And then I just had a separate bin for all my little DKs or whatever.
Yeah. But so technically, you know, in a week, you could have a mess, get it out, have a mess, and get it put away. If you just have a friend that will help you kind of, you know, that first part where you're typing in and you're taking the picture and you're typing in and you're taking the picture and you're saying, are you going to put all the colors of that? You know, you have a green, a red, a blue, and a purple. Are you going to do each one of those as one? Or were they bought so that they go together and you're going to take one picture and put one post? Right. And once you kind of decide those things, I should do a class on that.
I think you should.
I should do a class on how to kind of get that, put your stash on Ravelry and that process. I'm going to Matt's. And that does not want me to come because he's got so many sweaters quantities and he's like, I just think it's too much. And I said, no, Matt, I'm coming.
Does he have more than you, do you think?
Oh, I think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I think so. But he knits a lot more sweaters than anybody else,
it's
right?
Not a contest. I mean, it's,
but like he's not, you know, like we all say I have more stash than I'll ever knit, but Matt knits a lot of sweaters every year. So the fact that he has a lot of sweaters, I don't know that he's added because it's not on Ravelry. So I don't know that he's added and said, oh, I have 50 sweaters quantities, right? But at one time I had like 67 sweaters quantities. I mean, it was obnoxious, but for me, that was like anything over 4 skeins. That doesn't mean that those couldn't be broken up into smaller things, right? So it sounds like a ton, but it is. But at one time I was knitting 20 sweaters a year. I was knitting 15, 18, 20 sweaters a year at one point where I was just, it was obnoxious. Like it was all product and crazy. Before I started the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe when I go to Matt's, we could show that, you know, that part of this is the decisions you have to make about putting your stash on Ravelry. That would be kind of fun.
I think that would be good.
Once you get,
I
don't know, 10 or so going, then it was
good. Yeah,
very slick.
Yeah, it's very gratifying.
The next sweater is another kind of bulky jacket.
Yep, very much bulky. This is called Big Love by Anka Strick, and it's made out of Eco Cloud Cascade, which is 70% merino, 30% baby alpaca, but I held it along with a mohair. And, you know, this I made several years ago, so I'm trying to remember if I think my gauge, I think I had to adjust for that.
Okay.
The other reason I'm bringing that up is I think I maybe made it at a bulkier weight than maybe what it was intended for. But I also did not make it as big as what they said because they really oversized it, and I didn't want it quite that oversized. Interesting construction with this is that you start in the very back at the collar, and you start from the collar and then you come out. And I haven't done it for a while, so I can't tell you exactly how that goes. Other than that, when you make this part through here, then you're picking up your stitches, and then you're coming up and around on the other side.
Yep.
If I remember that correctly.
Over,
yeah.
Yep.
And I know it's got that, what's that, drop sleeve type of look?
Yep. Drop shoulder.
Drop shoulder that works out. I added this little jewel embellishment on here, but not so much as an embellishment other than the fact that I didn't like it the way it was flopping open.
I love that. I love that that's down there like that. It's offset. I think it's really cool looking. It doesn't look off or like yeah, it looks really purposeful. I love that.
Oh, good. Thanks. Thanks, Cori. And I tacked it down here too. So I've picked up on some of your tips that if you have something that you're just going to pull over anyways, and I know I'm not going to be opening it up, you can tack it in certain spots and then it's ready to go.
Yeah, and it doesn't get wonky. Very bulky. The collar is lovely. It lays really nice.
And even I was just noticing the edge on here too, that some particular type. It wasn't a regular bind off. I think it was something else that was created the type of edging that is on here too.
It's really pretty. It's very kind of tailored and structured, but it's very dense.
Very dense and heavy, yeah.
And it would be really, really warm.
Yes, very warm.
It's got the alpaca in it, or the mohair. Yeah, mohair in it would be.
Yeah, both. It's got the alpaca
and the mohair.
And the mohair in there. And so I could actually see this being as like definitely a fall jacket that I could throw over.
Yeah.
But I was just saying to Cori when we put this on the mannequin, I think it's kind of unisex. I mean, I could see making this for a man or a woman.
Sure. Yep.
You know,
yeah,
it
for
could
sure.
go either way. In fact, I think they did show that on the website.
Yeah, they
that was
probably
for
did.
both. So, yeah,
really pretty.
My gray palette.
You saved them till the end. The last one.
Yeah. So this is Plum by, let's see if hopefully I can say the name correctly, Yonko Okamoto.
Yep.
And it's definitely an oversized sweater. I actually saw this sweater on a podcast or a blogger, Girl Meets Yarn. And she had shown this on her, and I just thought, wow, I really like this, kind of that oversized look. And I just, something about it just really was appealing to me because it was oversized. Kind of, I was going to say to Cori, that sexy look, which then I think, I don't think I can pull it off, but I'll try to make it.
But Marlisa does. Like,
yes, she does. She's great.
She would pull it off the shoulder.
Yes, and
or
have
turn
something
it around.
right,
Yep.
and then have like a little tank or something on underneath. And it's V neck in the front, but it's a rounded neck in the back. But she would flip it around on her vlog and showing how it was made, and then how you can wear it in different ways. I did this a bit different in a couple spots. One of the things with this pattern, which I thought was very interesting on some of the construction here, was that they showed that this part tended to ripple right in through here, and that people who were making this sweater were complaining that they were having a hard time getting it to lay down. So I decided I was going to try to work around that, and I think starting about here, I put little markers, so every time I came across this area here, I just stitched tighter. And I kept stitching tighter all the way through until when I got into about here, and then I stopped stitching tighter to kind of pull that area in. Otherwise, this would be too much excess yarn coming out through there. So I think that worked, and I was able to block some of that out. Because it's called Plum, you can see this area in through here. It's supposed to look like, I think, like plums coming through here. And a bit of the lace work that's through here. I added just this other color on the bottom. I didn't call for that. But also the part that I really enjoyed the construction was on the sleeves, and it's probably hard to see. We can probably, because you can see all of the cabling that came down. And then if I remember correctly here, this is like a 1x1, or well, yeah, 1x1 rib that they did on either side. So it kind of frames that cabling as it comes down, which I thought was interesting construction.
Let's turn it back so you guys can see that lace in the front. Yeah, that's a little better. Maybe even a little closer. That. Yeah. Right up in our pores, but
right.
But yeah, see how pretty that lace is? Oh yeah, it's really stunning. What yarn did you use?
I knew you were gonna ask that, so I'll tell Cori so she can post it for later.
Yeah,
but it's
no problem.
actually a yarn that my sister had given me a gift certificate for the yarn shop that's Mall of America.
Oh yeah.
Is that Knit and Crochet? It's the name of the yarn shop.
Yeah.
And I think this has some wool and silk. So it's pretty drapey. Another thing that I really liked about it is that it has a lot of stitch definition. It's hard for you to see it from here, but
you can really up close. The stitches are really nice.
Yeah, it's kind of I think it was an Italian yarn.
Yeah,
they
do some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So once again, my palette with color gray, and then some of the blue and the neutrals, and I am going to actually modify. That was one thing I was going to bring up. So I'm always thinking I need everything longer, but sometimes my tendency is to make things too long. And then even if I rolled the sleeves, it didn't look right. I'm thinking I'm going to probably shorten this in some way, because once again, like we've talked about before, in reality, if I'm not going to wear it, it doesn't do anyone any good sitting in a closet unless I give it to someone or donate to someone that it's more their size or whatever too. So I do need to do some modifications. Like I said, it is really way oversized. It's meant to be kind of big and bulky, kind of wide.
But I really feel like with your body type, like you're tall and trim and like you have the height to pull off that really oversized. And Marlisa is very petite and
tiny.
Shorter, and so she kind of has that, right? Like
That's true.
that, like that ability to pull, because for her oversized is not it's a giant sweater for her, but it's not a huge size, right? Like, and so I think, yeah, it's really interesting. I would love to see this on you, because I would like to kind of know how it, you know, how you feel like it fits. But I know you said that the sleeves feel too long.
Too long, yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I think in general how it fits on the shoulders and so on, I think, you know, potentially works out okay. But yeah, it was a fun knit. It took quite a while getting through all of this, but I really enjoyed it and really enjoyed doing the sleeves.
There's lots going on, so that's fun, right? Like that's fun stuff when there's stuff going on.
Also on the side too, it has that cabling, which I like the detail coming off the side too. So so the sleeves have it, the arms have it. Yeah, really a lot of stuff going on in that. Yeah, that's, I guess, one of the things that I like about knitting is I like a challenge. And that was my challenge was here, because like I said, a ton of people are posting how that was really bothering them, and I'm like, well, I got to figure out how to do that. So that was kind of fun trying to work with
that. Was a great solve. I mean, a really good idea for how to solve that.
Okay,
next we're going to show you a book that Bonnie recently bought, and she was nice enough to bring it, and it's amazing. So look at that. Yeah, she bought the new Embroidery on Knits book. It's out by Lane Publishing, and it's by Judith Gumlick. And I assume that that's Judith, and you think she's from Germany.
Possibly from Germany, because there's a mention about living near, I think, the Moselle River. And I just was taken with how beautiful this book is. Just to see some of the patterning in here. The pictures are just gorgeous the way that it was photographed.
Yeah, I sat and looked through it because Bonnie marked a bunch of pages for us to see. And it's really, really pretty.
Yeah, so I think the idea, the theory on it, which I've looked a little bit at it, is that this, I'm going to call it a cloth, but it's a specialized type of a cloth that you put on the embroidery hoop after you transferred the pattern. It will dissolve away. So you cut away the excess after you get done doing your embroidery on here. And then I think there's some type of a soaking that, you know, melts that away. And you can just see all the different types of patterns. And then some of them actually are using silk ribbon. Let's see if I can find some of those
so
here.
I think this is kind of the wave of the future, is that we're going to start really seeing a lot of embroidery on knits, because a lot of knitters do embroidery. They know how. And so,
Yeah, so that bottom part there, and I think it's a coneflower, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah, that is silk ribbon that has been used for embroidery. Just amazing some of the things that they have in here. And like I said, the book itself is just gorgeous. Here they show doing some of the
it's like ribbon. A coffee table book.
Yes,
like you leave this out, and any knitter that came to your house would pick it up and page through it.
Yeah, so there's some
and
other
you
ones.
got it at Darnin anyway, but it's sold out everywhere.
Yes,
they're doing
a third publishing they said that they're doing a third publishing on it right now, but I think it's sold out everywhere.
Yeah.
So when I saw this, I actually hugged it in the store. So it's something that I have not done embroidery in quite a while, but that will be on one of my next things I'm going to be doing this winter is doing it on some knits. In fact, that's one of the things when I was reading this, they actually recommended that you, before you actually do it on a sweater or your project, just do it on something simple and just practice with it. Just get used to the stitching, working with the material. So something that would be
I'm so glad she bought it. Yeah. Well,
really fun.
I want to thank Bonnie so much for coming today. I know she was nervous, just
Yes,
like
I was
Renee.
nervous.
The first time you come and you're bringing their stuff, and she came with notes like Renee. She had everything written down. She had a whole box of stuff. She had to drive across the city. She had to drive me out here because I'm not driving yet from my surgery. And, you know, she had it all organized. And then you did a great job.
Oh,
I mean,
thank
you and I
Cori.
can talk.
Yeah, we can.
we can. When we get together, we chat. But like Renee, you're also an introvert,
Very
right?
much
And
so,
like
yeah.
Matt. So I don't know how I have surrounded myself with so many introverts in my life. It's probably because I just think everyone should listen to me talk.
Oh, right.
And you're all quiet knitting today. Not everybody wants to hear about Kylie's wedding. Did I go on and on? And Karen asked me a number of questions, but every time she asked me, I'm like, I should just shut up. Right? Like, this is so much. Do we really want to talk about weddings for 2 hours?
We did. We do. We did.
But it
we
was
do.
mostly because I was just chatterboxing. But anyway, thank you. You're a dear friend.
appreciated. I feel the same way.
I love having you in my life, and that we could do this together, and that you were willing, because there were some people at the table today who were like, I am not doing that. I'm not coming to your house, and I am not going to show my favorite knits. And I'm like, you guys, I'll make it easy. And I'll edit it so we look great. I'll put on a really nice filter so we look young.
Ooh, I love that. That's perfect.
None of that. We don't do any of that
No.
right around here. So,
Right.
okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye,
Cori.
you guys.
All right. Bye.